My name is Londa Rolfing. At one of the final sewing expos that I participated in my career as a traveling educator, I was presented with Days for Girls. I was just going up and down the aisles of the expo as time away from the booth, and honestly, I just feel God put this in front of me as a wonderful way that I could put my sewing skills to use in my retirement. All of my sewing background led me to realize that there was a really easier way to go about making the hardest part of one of the Days for Girls kits, and that is the shield that snaps into the panties that holds the liners. If Days for Girls is totally new for you, please go to daysforgirls.org. Your heart will be warmed, and I just hope that you participate in this wonderful worldwide cause along with me. Here's how I have developed to make the shields, and in sharing it with other teams and chapters, they have told me that it cuts their time by 2/3. Now, it might well take a little bit more fabric, but I think the trade-off is well worth it. We use templates, so we have templates, rectangular shaped, from which we cut our fabric, dark colors and light colors for the shield itself, and also the PUL. So you see, contrary to the regular official directions where you come up with the pattern piece and then you cut this shape out of your fabrics and the PUL, the polyurethane waterproof barrier, my feeling was it was awfully hard to cut all of those shapes. And now I know a lot of chapters have the die cuts that helps them cut these. But even that being said, I felt like to pin all these layers together, not putting the pin in through the interior of the PUL, compromising its waterproof characteristic, and get it accurately stitched was just more than I thought I could handle, much less sewers with less experience. So again, we cut 9x10 rectangles of the fabric and the PUL. Simple. We also have a template for the pocket and also a template for the pocket as it's folded so that we get it pressed the right way. The next step is a great step for non-sewers, and non-sewers can do this cutting as well with a rotary cutter. So we're going to press each of the shield 9x10 rectangles into half. The pocket pieces have already been folded and stitched and cut apart, and then these also are folded in half. Now, why do I fold these in half? I fold them in half to mark the centers, because the next step is going to follow the directions that I have here. We're going to take the right side up of the lighter color, which is going to end up on the outside of the shield, and we lay it down on a grid so that we're lining up that center fold. So pretty side up of the lighter of the two fabrics. Then we take the pockets and aligning your center folds and the raw edges, you layer it down. We're creating a sandwich, right? Then we'll take what's going to become the outside of the shield and lay it pretty side down, right? So you have to do all this accurately. Accuracy is the really important part of this process. So a non-sewer can do that. Another non-sewing task is to take a template that you have cut, and this was cut out of plexiglass by a great guy from our church, fairly accurately, it works, so that then, and it was cut the finished size. You see it's a 1/4 inch less big all the way around, except at these edges, the top and the bottom edge. So then, out of the PUL squares, which have also been cut 9x10, non-sewers can lay this down and with a ballpoint pen, trace around. The other thing that we have them do is to very clearly mark the center at the top and the bottom. Now you can take this PUL piece and layer it on. Again, you're on a grid, so you can align these center marks. Then you're going to want to pin. And as you all know, we're going to be very careful how we pin. I put one pin at each of the pocket edges, pretty close to the fold, not to the fold, but to the cut edge. And then out here in each of these quadrants, I'm going to put a pin. but that pin is not going to go past that traced line. So the pairing up of all of these cut pieces, that's a fun task for a non-sewing person. And with the how-to sheet right in front of them and somebody handy to be double checking to make sure that this sandwich is done properly, a non-sewer can do this as well. Then the next step is to stitch. You're going to stitch right along these lines. That's what's been done here. I have stitched using a smaller stitch length than normal. I like to use the Microtex size 75 needle, and we use generally a olive colored thread. When we come here to the edge of the pocket, we backstitch. So we know that where that pocket joins in, that's a very strong joining. So you're starting, if you're at the sewing machine, you're starting to stitch here, you feel the pocket, you backstitch, you go all the way around. Now at this point, then you stop, turn it around, and come around this way. Then you need to take a large scissors and very accurately trim it down to about 1/8 of an inch, as you see I've done here. Are you with me so far?
Yes.
Then the next step, you've got to turn everything right side out. So you have to get in there and turn it all pretty side out, but you can do that through one of these loose ends. Following that, you need to stitch across the ends. And when you do that step, you have to make sure that the pockets are on the pretty side of the PUL. Did you note that we use pretty PUL? So yes, we're spending more money on our PUL, but I always buy it at Joann's when they have 50% with an additional 20% off. I'm also well aware of the fact because we are cutting rectangles, and when we trim this out, we have waste. We're not tessellating those shapes like the directions tell you to do. But because of the time that this saves, and I think additional accuracy, we feel that it's a good trade-off. But these pockets must be on the pretty side of the PUL. Can you see that? Does that make sense? If this pocket were on this side before I stitched across the top, it's not going to end up the way it should. Okay, so the pocket needs to be on the pretty side of the PUL, and then you're going to stitch across the top and the bottom. After that, you're going to grade and trim the seam allowance. So we grade closer to the pocket here, so that seam's going to be graduated, and we very carefully trim into the corners, but we obey those directions and we leave about 1/8 of an inch here. And then this tool, a ballpoint bodkin, this flat end really works great for turning. So I can take that flat end and very safely, but yet forcefully, push those corners out just as nice and square as they can possibly be. All right. So now do you see those pockets have ended up on the darker of the two sides of the shield, because it's that darker side that we want to be the inside of the shield, because that darker color will be less likely to show any blood stains. All right, then it's pressed and then it's top stitched, just as any other directions would tell you. So here's what we end up with: the shield top stitched with the cam snap installed. This one shows you that the liner fits in perfectly, and if you put this on top of the original pattern, you will see that it is just as pretty perfect as it can be, 1/4 of an inch less big than the pattern given to you from Days for Girls. So you see, we're sewing on lines on a bigger piece that we have very carefully and accurately stitched together, rather than cutting out that T shape of everything. So that's how we do it here at the Jackson Days for Girls teams. Give it a try. I think you might like it.